Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Level Set. I am Larry Fields, and I have the distinct pleasure to be in community with the Mike Jones and the Dr. Charles Alexander. We are going to broach a couple of subjects, if it's the Lord's will, and we can get it in. We're going to start off talking about just referencing, and I hope to be a better point guard in the future and get this document to you all ahead of time, or documents of of the such. This is a comparative financial analysis of Louisiana land grant universities, the based and predicated on the Morrill Acts and Brown Revisited. It's by Dr. William F. Tate IV, who's the president of LSU, Louisiana State University, and I'm happy. Right now I had just visited their campus, but and I'm on the road with their, in full disclosure, with their women's basketball team because I'm a fanatic about women's basketball and great teaching. And I've watched their coach this weekend put on just a master class in teaching young ladies, and I saw some of the most brilliant young student athletes I've ever seen in my life in these young ladies. But that's not the point. We're going to dive directly to into this article to the extent, and I apologize once again because I was so fascinated with this article. I read it on the plane yesterday coming from New Orleans, I mean from Baton Rouge to Austin. But this the distinct, so I'll get right into it and state under the Morrill Act of 1862, and Morrill is spelled Morrill. The federal government initiated financial support for state land grant universities to support agriculture and mechanical arts. The two Morrill Acts explain, in part, the rapid rise of the U.S. to a global economic power in the 20th century. As the US surpassed the UK and other European economies in terms of gross domestic product and GDP per capita, reflecting historically, the Morrill Act of 1862 supported the establishment or enhancement of public higher education institutions that rank among the premier research universities in the world, including the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, University of Florida, Louisiana State University, and Agricultural and Mechanical College at the time, that's now known as LSU, Auburn University, Clemson University, Texas A&M University, University of Missouri, Virginia Tech, University of Maryland, College Park, University of Georgia, University of Tennessee, Knoxville University of California, Berkeley, and North Carolina State University. So through the 60s, many of these Southern land grant institutions did not fully racially integrate or allow Black residents in their state to participate in agricultural extension programming. So under the second Morrill Act, a state that did not permit Blacks to attend its land grant universities, those higher education entities supported by the first Morrill Act was considered compliant with the legislation if the state created a separate college focused on agricultural and mechanical arts for Black students. The Morrill Act of 1890 allows states to create separate land grant institutions for Black students with one major requirement, and that was equitable funding. So the federal funds were to be equitably divided and supplemented by the state from its own revenue. And yeah, so this article does a great job of chronicling Southern University, which is a historically Black college set up by the Second Morrill Act, and the funding of LSU. And the disparity of the two is criminal in terms of the funds that Southern University has received over time and the funds that the prestigious flagship school, state of Louisiana, has received over time. So yeah, there appears to be roughly a $5 billion delta in terms of not just between those two, but underfunding that that Southern University has established. And so, what we need to understand, we can extrapolate this example for the vast majority of land grant historically Black colleges and the underfunding that we've had. But the thing that was striking to me is that I have not appreciated the discrepancies, um, nor the institutional blatant racism that still exists to this date, and oftentimes want to essentially blame the victim, blame the alumni for things that are not the alumni's responsibility. Everyone pays into this tax pool, and these federal dollars, we pay more in the northern states and Midwest into the pot than the southern states do. So we're all funding white supremacy in this thing.
This is agreed. I think another thing to know and to, well, I think one of the things that we struggle with is, um, again, our lack of administrative knowledge about, um, about the federal government. Certainly about our state and local governments as well. So it's not that we totally disregard the farm bill, is that we have no idea what it means. And so we tend to pay attention to it if we hear something relative, you know, to to aid for needy families, for TANA, for SNAP, and things of that nature. So we tend to pay attention to it for that. Um, every so often, um, and I do mean every so often, we pay attention to it relative to black farmers, but we don't even pay attention to it relative to the black farmers enough, right? But what I never hear anybody say is that that's why our 19 land grant colleges and universities are underfunded. That was where the money comes from. And that is the space in which the disproportionate funding occurs. And so we, on the other hand, this is one of the prime areas that we sit and, you know, we blame ourselves over and over again. Because we don't pay attention to colleges otherwise. They're doing infinite. I mean, like tons of more white universities have closed. It don't even compare the amount of public and private white universities that close versus HBCUs, right? It don't even compare. And so it don't even compare how many of them are also they close because they're underfunded. And so our underfunding isn't because um, black alums don't give back. Our underfunding doesn't occur because of malfeasance. And I'm not saying that those two things aren't an issue. I'm saying that those aren't the core issues. Our underfunding occurs because at least just since the 80s, the federal government owes us 13 to 15 billion dollars. Right. That's why our institutions struggle, is because our land grant institutions don't get the federal funds that are due them, and they don't get it now, and they haven't gotten it historically. Because again, that number that we're bantering around now, even when we have this conversation, that 13 billion, that's that's just the past 30 years. That that doesn't date back to the establishment of the second Morrill Act. That doesn't go back to 1890. That's just a conservative cost on our most current, you know, that's a current estimate of the past 30 years. But
So,
we don't necessarily understand any of that.
Yeah, but
and
and Mike, when we go to you, keep that thought, but I have to have you comment on the lack of agency when we get into power to correct these ills.
Larry, that you read my mind because that's exactly where I was going, and I'm glad Charles brought the issue into the 20th, 20, late 20th, 21st century, uh, because that's where we have political agency at scale, both in the state legislatures, in a lot of most places, and definitely at the federal level. And I see, that there's a statement, in a situation like this, uh, everybody's responsible, but everybody's not to blame. And I'm gonna blame us for this. We can't get mad at white folks being white folks, being who they've always been. Okay, maybe they ought not be that, but that's who they are. But you have 56 black members of the House of Representatives. Okay, when Democrats are in control of the House, there is nothing that will pass the House of Representatives, which means if it doesn't pass the House, particularly as the revenue bills have to start in the House, that it can't get to the Senate and it'll never get to the president's desk. So the real question is, how does this happen given our current profile in a lot of the state legislate states that you went over that had land grant colleges? You have significant black representation in the state legislature in senior capacity. They are committee chairman, etc. And so the question is, how does this happen at the state level? And we got to be blamed for that. Okay, I mean, it's whose fault is it that it's this bad? And I'm gonna say it's got to be our fault. One of the and I'll use a proverb, Larry. Where the leaders have no vision, the people perish.
And I will make it a personal point to state that after attending Bible classes with Mr. A, Dr. Alexander's father, that was one of his favorites. He would
Okay,
say, my people perish for a lack of a vision, at least, twice a month when we had classes. So yeah,
okay.
that's a big one here.
And here's why I'm referencing that. If you took the universe of black politicians in America at the state and federal level and asked them, why do you want to be a congressman, a senator, a state representative, a state senator, or even president of the United States? They couldn't tell you why they want to be that. They couldn't tell you if you had, and this is a question I always have for somebody, for young, because I'm old now, so young folks that come to ask me about politics and they want to run for something. And I have one question for them. I said, what is it that you're trying to do that you need to be in this office to get done? And literally nobody ever has an answer. And the answer could be personal. It could be I want to do X and I need to be this to do my X, or I could want to do something more uh, generous to the larger community, and I need to be there. So you run for a job with power and responsibility, and you have no idea what you want to do once you get power and responsibility. So I would suggest, as my 40 decades of practice in this business tells me that people sitting in powerful positions in state legislatures and Congress get what they want. They get what they ask for. And if you're not getting anything, it's because you didn't ask for anything. You didn't demand anything. We have a famous, iconic state senator, the late J.B. Chet Banks. And Jet was a legendary, Senator Banks was legendary in Jefferson City, both on the Republican side of the, he was a Democrat on the Republican side of the aisle, the Democratic side of the aisle, the black, the white side of the legislature and the black side. Because Jet a was a lethal politician, and he always got what he wanted. Because if he didn't, you wouldn't get anything you wanted if it had to come by him, and that was just his rule. So one of the land grant colleges uh, uh, in America is Lincoln University in Missouri. It was created as a function of the University of Missouri, as started by black Union soldiers after the Civil War.
Say that louder, please, Mike, because folks do not appreciate who founded Lincoln University.
Okay, Lincoln University was founded by black Civil War veterans after the Civil War. But it's a land grant college, and there was a time uh, in Jefferson City. Harris Stowe is another historically black college that was started by the State Louis Board of Education, fundamentally to educate is a teachers college, and it's a state university. And both of those uh, colleges struggled, but yet fundamentally ensured that Lincoln survived. And when everybody in the state, the University of Missouri, the governor, etc., uh, wanted to close Harris Stowe, literally, because it wasn't big enough, it was too small, it didn't have an expansive curriculum, because it was Harris Stowe Teachers College. That Senator Banks said, "No, you're not closing it, and in fact, you're gonna make it a university." And there were folks that said, "Well, no, we at the University of Missouri." Everybody said, "No, it needs to do that." And basically, Senator Banks said, if Harris doesn't survive and prosper and get adequately funded, nothing else around here is going to happen either. So this is not about how you feel about Harris Stowe. It's really about, or Lincoln, it's really about how you feel about your stuff. When I was a young alderman, my paradigm for how you interact with people were, if you shoot my dog, I'm going to kill your cat. So the question is not how you feel about my dog, is how much do you care about your cat? Okay, because if you don't care anything about the cat, I won't be able to protect my dog. But if you love your cat, my dog is gonna be all right. Because I promise you, I guarantee, if anything happened to the dog, the cat is dead. Your fault, accident, I don't care no more. So the dog better be all right. Because if the dog is not all right, the cat is gonna be dead. Now, if you can't operate like that, you have absolutely no business in this business taking care of the business of people to send you in a place to represent them. And that as bad as America is about so many things, when you have power, and the will to impose it on people, you can change things. Okay, if we look at our forefathers, our ancestors, from the black abolitionists through Reconstruction. Hell, the reason you got public schools in America, tax supported public schools, is for black legislators in the South, basically, because black kids needed schools. They created public schools for everybody. If white Southern legislators would still have everybody ignorant and illiterate, but for black legislators in the 1870s in Reconstruction. So we have examples of black politicians rising to the occasion. Not enough examples, but rising to the occasion when they've been sent in, when they used to be sent in the arena to fight for black people. Now we have black politicians that are in the arena about their personal ambition. And all of their calculus is about what it means to me, not what it means for us. And so, as Cassius said to Brutus in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, the stars, dear Brutus, lies not the problem, dear Brutus, lies not in the stars, but in ourselves. So this ain't our fate. This ain't our destiny. This is our inability and unwillingness to send people, and we ought to fire people. That's the one thing black people do. We are too sympathetic and tolerant of black failure. Okay, if as a people, if we were athletic coaches at any level, college, high school, or pro, we'd have the worst teams in every conference because we wouldn't cut or fire nobody. We let everybody play because, well, you know, he's so and so's son or she saw somebody's daughter, then she's a nice kid. Man, I need ball players. Okay, and I'm keeping the best 12 ball because I got one job when I'm the coach. I got to win a game.
And that is it.
That's
And that
it.
is it. That is
And
it.
that's the way you ought to handle your politics.
Yeah. And welcome, Attorney Jerry L. Christmas. We are talking about the land grant disparity. The two agency leaders shared estimates from, well, actually, let me go back. Thomas Vilsack wrote letters to the governors of 16 states that describe the funding disparities between land grant, historically black colleges and universities, and non-HBCU land grant universities in their states. The two agency leaders shared estimates from the National Center of Education Statistics that, as Dr. Alexander alluded to, indicated over $12 billion in funding disparities accumulated between the HBCU and non-HBCU land grants in the designated states, and the period under review was from 1987 to 2020, and the disparities were a product of underfunded per student in-state appropriated funds. These funding disparities represented non-compliance with the Morrill Act of 1890. Both the Morrill Act of 1862 and the Morrill Act of 1890 have been things that we've been discussing today. And so, knowing that I believe Alabama A&M is one of those land grant colleges that you're familiar with, and you can speak firsthand on just how ridiculous that disparity is.
Yeah, the disparity is outrageous, and especially when you talk about the university we just talked about at Lincoln University, the disparity in the funding to Lincoln, the amount that they are receiving now in proportion to what they're supposed to receive is outrageous. Somebody just contacted me in the last couple of weeks with an interest in filing a lawsuit as a result of that. And that continues to be a major problem. And, right now, all of my children have been to 1890 schools. because of the USDA 1890 scholarship. And that in and of itself is on the line right now with this new administration. That's being debated right now. So we're waiting to see what the fallout is going to be with that. And what Mike is talking about, I think, is exactly on point when we talk about the politicians. Because when you think about the politicians and what Senator Banks was doing back then compared to what's happening right now, it's like night and day. If if Mike is saying that if you can't operate in politics like that, then we don't need you in politics, then we got to wipe the whole slate clean here because we don't have anybody operating like that on our behalf at all at the local level. And then if you think about at the national level, what if they had that attitude? What if the Black Caucus had that attitude? Because we know the margins are so slim in Congress right now. The Black Caucus could hold up any piece of legislation if they decided that they were not going to vote for it, both on the Senate and the House side, because their votes are so desperately needed. But if they ever drilled down and took that position, if you kill my dog, I'm gonna kill your cat. Can you
Now,
imagine?
No, he
Gerald,
said if you harm,
yeah,
If
if you
you
harm, you,
harm,
yeah,
if
if
you
you harm, you
harm my
kill.
dog,
Yeah, I may have to
but if
kill your
you
whole
harm
litter
my
if you.
dog and I'll kill your cat, can you imagine what we could get accomplished in a short period of time if the caucus took that position? Even, at the federal and even at the state level. It's just, it's amazing the times that we in now with so much abundance in the country, so much abundance in our community, but yet have leadership that will not stand up for us. But I guess part of the problem too is us not pressuring them to do it either. Because like Mike said, we allow for this. We won't put the best players on the field.
At all. Doc, you have any comments as we transition?
I think that the when we look at Harris Stowe in particular, I think that it gives us a model for how we should fight. I mean, because with Harris Stowe, in order for Harris Stowe to be, um, it took state and federal, um, commitment and assistance. It took, you know, the the black business community and the broader black community to 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 really buoy and grow it. And so Mike mentioned uh, Jet Banks, and but we also have, we have, Lacey Clay, and we have Dr. Givens. We have all of those. We got those people coming together, each of them bringing a specific, um, you know, source of power, and intellectual prowess and commitment to the people in order for um, for Harris Stowe to grow and ultimately thrive. And so, and as with so many things in St. Louis, we don't recognize the fight real time. We don't necessarily recognize um, our import and how the things that occur in St. Louis um, are so important for how the rest of the how our allied black communities in the rest of the state and the rest of these states can ultimately move forward. Let's say Gerald takes this case and he gets um, he gets he gets equitable funding for Lincoln University. That's going to be the template. And as with so many other things, it will have its genesis in St. Louis. And and Gerald will certainly lean on local resources. He's gonna get information from wherever he gets it from, but he's gonna fundamentally lean on local resources in order to win this case. And so these fights, this is the historical nature of St. Louis. Dred Scott. I mean, this
That's
is
ground zero.
this is ground zero. Mike Brown, Ferguson. I mean, um, you know, uh, what is the housing discrimination case?
All of the housing
Right.
Yeah,
discrimination
yeah.
cases.
All of this stuff is St. Louis is ground zero.
Yeah.
And this is where we do the fight. This is how we built the way we built, right? We don't always understand that this is the way that we're built. And since we don't understand it, we just necessarily can't appreciate it as such. But the if Harris Stowe ain't nothing else, it is emblematic of resistance.
Well, just also for the record, there is not a bench on the Harris Stowe campus named after Senator Banks.
That's our fault too. We got to do a better
That's what I'm
job in
talking
that.
about.
That's absolutely absurd.
Right.
That's absurd. That's absurd. It really
And
is.
and
We have to
could
talk to Dr. Collins about that.
We got to
and
talk to her about that.
Mhm. You know, they just hosted
but you
the
know what?
mayoral debate at Harris Stowe this week.
But you know what, Gerald? What Senator Banks did for Harris Stowe, he did 25, 30 years. He did 30 years ago. Okay, so this ain't even on President Collins. This and literally any reasonably informed political person, a person operating in that space, knew what Senator Banks did, and the fact that and he he was, if you just wanted to know how power worked in a legislative body, he was a classic example. And I want to take a minute just to make the distinction. He had a rule that if you were from St. Louis and coming to see get something done in Jefferson City, the state capital, if you didn't talk to him first, you couldn't talk to him at all. Okay, you got to come see me first. You go talk to anybody else second, but you got to come see me first. And if you didn't, you couldn't talk to him about it. You didn't. And the interesting part about that is everybody in the state capitol understood that. So in the House, in the Senate, and you could be white or you could be black talking to a white legislator about an issue in St. Louis. And the only thing that's the white legislator would ask you,
Did you talk to Jet yet?
you talk to Jet yet? That's all. Okay. Ain't nothing I can do for you till you talk to Jet. Okay. But if you talk to Jet and he okay, you okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you supposed to be in that space. And if you ain't up to that, you shouldn't be in the space. And Gerald,
Nobody's teaching that right now, though, Mike. I think that's the problem. These legislators now, they don't have any history of that or understanding of it.
But you can't be soft as hospital cotton and be taught that. Okay, I mean, you either got to be built for this or you're not. And to your point, if we ain't got nobody built for this, we'd have to get rid of everybody in pro sports, that's what they call rebuilding. Okay,
That's it.
they just
That's it.
they get rid of everybody, so we got to start all over again.
You
Cause
got to start all over again.
this team, this dog don't hunt. Okay,
Mm-mm.
and we got to build it back from the bottom up. Okay, and ain't nothing
Uh,
wrong with that.
no. Well, Mike,
And I
talking
think
about
another
talk.
problem too, Larry, and I don't know if you have any input on this too. I think one another problems too is that the black lawyers, do not engage in politics at all here. And that's just kind of unusual to me in comparison to the other cities that I've lived in. I find that very odd. And, I think about how, when I was coming back to St. Louis, after being in Atlanta and being in Houston, and it was you couldn't get the lawyers to engage in politics really, and you still can't get them to engage in politics. The whole idea that Gabe Gore ran unopposed was kind of unbelievable to me, and the fact that I was also getting calls about running myself, and I was thinking I ran 20 years ago, did it twice, but it's just the whole idea that um so many black lawyers in the community here just have no ambition or no desire for politics at all, except for when they want to be appointed judge. Now, when they want to be appointed judge, then they will start calling political people or people they know that are engaged in politics, asking them then, to help them. That's just how I find it to be. I'm just curious what your opinion is.
I find it to be similar to that and kind of fragmented. And, to be honest with you, the way some of them think, I don't know if we want them in politics because I was just, almost dismayed by the number of individuals that abandoned Corey and cool, and supported and put money behind guys that didn't need your money, number one, and certainly don't have your interest at heart, number two. So there needs to be really a lawyer education before we do anything, because I just don't think that these guys are in tuned and plugged into what's going on, and there's too many of them that practice respectability politics, and this is we will not get anywhere with respectability politics in my vein. So,
I
but
think part of the
before,
problem too, let me ask you this, what you think about if we didn't have the nonpartisan court plan and the judges actually they had to run for these seats. I think that would make them more engaged and more competitive.
I think that
And I
I
think it
think
would help the city too, because then the lawyers would have to live in these areas. If we had districts just like state rep districts, we had judicial districts, they had to run in, and the lawyers would have to live all over the city, as opposed to, right now, all the judges live south of Delmore. We don't have any judges living north of Delmore. But all the defendants are north of Delmore. And then even in civil litigation, most of those individuals are north of Delmore, because unfortunately we are highly litigious on the civil side too. So I just think it would be, if we didn't have the nonpartisan court plan, I think that would be beneficial. And you notice we only have the nonpartisan court plan where the judges are appointed by the governor in the areas where we have the highest population of black people. You look at St. Charles, right across the river from us, they elect their judges.
and
right,
and I would say, because I'm older than you all, and I remember before there was a nonpartisan court plan, there was the partisan court plan, and the definition of a judge was a lawyer who knew a politician. And I would suggest we had better judges, we had better everything when you had to know somebody who knew somebody, because
Mm.
it in that era, in that culture, a water weak uh, white folks, black person wouldn't go get a political appointment. There's
right.
judges like
So,
Cahill and the extraordinary Theodore McMillan. They came out of a black political culture. People. Here's what will happen when you put in the work. People will go get you and say
Mm.
you need to do this. Okay, uh, part of the problem in democracy is fundamentally the public does not keep up with what it takes. It is not very well informed to make the kind of decisions that you actually need. So these are personnel decisions. Okay, and yeah, I got a policy. I don't think I've ever written a letter for anybody in a non-partisan court plane because the only people that ever called me is people that don't know me.
Mm,
Okay,
mm,
so so
mm,
by definition, you can't call me and don't know me and want me to do something.
mm,
It just
mm.
don't
Well,
work like that.
And that's
and
exactly what they do. I did ask and text Senator Carla May this week and asked her to introduce the bill to eliminate the nonpartisan court plan in the city. I haven't gotten a response back from her yet, but when I get off of this, I am going to follow up with her.
well, please do, and I certainly will follow suit. Well, let's switch gears just a bit. I know we're short on time today, and I want to get opinions from everyone with respect to Kendrick Lamar's performance at the Super Bowl, as we need to highlight the importance of mass media and broadcasting and imagery and so forth. I mean, because I'm a firm believer that when we put people in that jury box, Gerald, oftentimes we have people in that jury box that have absolutely no knowledge whatsoever about true Black culture. You know, they have learned things from TV that don't exist, that a trope, it is a constant trope that has been broadcast to America to devalue Black folks across the board. So, having set the stage and foundation on that predicate, what was what were you all's thoughts about Kendrick Lamar's performance at the Super
I think
I
um,
enjoyed the performance. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I have many thoughts on this piece. Thank you, Gerald. Um, my first thought kind of goes to the conversation that we revisit often, and that is, you know, our relative revolutionary struggle that we tend to put into an age construct. Um, I think Kendrick's argument uh, as manifest through his music and his performance on during the Super Bowl and the response and reaction to it speaks to the fact that we do have a revolution and resistance mindset in our young people. It exists. Um, we have to um, we gotta resist the the um, the efforts by whoever the enemy is to segment our we segment our populations. We fall vulnerable. We are just vulnerable to this to the playbook, and so all this thing rests on you know literally that divide and conquer type of piece, and um, we do ourselves a disservice, and we're probably misreading history when we do this, and that we continue to say that um, that is that we all just going along to get along, and that's just not true. And and that performance was um, was evident of that. Another thing about that performance that I ain't heard nobody say is that in 2019, when the conversations, or 2018 or what have you, 2018 and 2019, and the conversations were being had about how we go from what was the Super Bowl, uh, the pomp and circumstance around the Super Bowl and whatever the NFL's relative role was going to be in um, a larger movement. People were shitting on Jay, saying he sold out. The reason you had Kendrick is because you had Jay, but ain't nobody said that yet. And when Jay said it's time for us to move a different way, stop kneeling or whatever, everybody, blah, 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 blah. Well, that turned into the relationship that has resulted in Super Bowls that have featured our culture back to back to back to back. And when we look at, if you look at the, if you could stroll back through your timeline and look at the first 5 or 10 minutes after his performance, you see Negroes saying, "Well, that's the last hip hop. That's the last hip hop uh, Super Bowl we're gonna see." It took hours for us to catch on. Not not young people, us, everybody. Everybody. It wasn't just that the young people got it. Everybody was still trying to figure out what they saw. Young people included. Everybody. You just gotta kind of, go through the things. And uh and then ultimately people realized what they were seeing. But every time, every Super Bowl, this was just clearly the most, you know, resistant base. But every last Super Bowl that you've seen since Rock Nation has taken over has been this. This content is different, right? But everything that Rock Nation has done since it has partnership has been about featuring our culture, featuring the folks who made our culture what it is, in a particular context. And that context has been to use rap, which is, what it's the third of the music's, of the music genres, if music genres even exist. It's the third one that has come purely from black. So again, as Mike has said, that there is no cultural music art form in the United States free of black folks. You know, country, blues, jazz, rap. It's all us. And out of those, you get contemporary and da 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 da. It's all us.
Find music anywhere that does not have streams of pops in it,
So
and
everything
you'll
is
find music that I don't want to listen to.
right. And so, so when we look at that, um, when we look at that, and we continue to have these conversations, there's a whole lot of stuff rolled up. There's a whole lot of stuff that happened and had to have happened to culminate in Kendrick on Sunday.
Awesome, Mike
Charles,
Jones. What
yeah,
are your reflections, Mr.
well,
Mike Jones?
first of all, I literally don't nothing about hip hop or rap, so I'm not go uh, uh, my, my my familiarity with hip hop ended with Big Daddy Kane and Run DMC and Public Enemy and NWA, and I love the Digital Underground Humpty, but but today I don't. But I will say this: I knew I was watching a profound work of art with major underlying themes. Okay, and it was clear. And I thought, ironically, there was a certain amount of justice in the universe that Trump brought his fat, ignorant ass to the game and then had to sit there and watch that and couldn't do nothing about it. Now that was worth the price of the admission, right, right there. But I think in a more serious tone, a more serious note, this is why you got Trump and MAGA America pushing back on this cultural front. While we've done a terrible job of politics, we have totally changed the cultural context of America and their need to wipe the slate clean, wipe the history clean, because they can't do anything about the politics till they reverse the culture. So we need to understand we're in a cultural war. That the images, the themes, the music, all of that is about how you understand and express reality. And whoever wins that will ultimately win the politics. And uh, the advantage that we have now that we've never had before is we took our worst beatings and got some of our worst, I mean, our best victories in an America that was 85% white and 12% black. We are now in America that's 13% black, but it's only 52, 53% white. And the younger you go, the browner the country gets. And uh, I would phase they're they're going after the imagery and Donald Trump's taking over the Kennedy Center for a reason. He don't know nothing about art, so somebody had to give him a culture. So somebody had to give him the idea. But what happened at Sunday, but is as important as anything else uh, that we're doing. So we have changed America based on our ability, uh, our aesthetic, and we've redefined the country and our role in it. Now we still got a whole lot of ways to go, but that's our most powerful tool, really.
I think that is once again a Mike Jones analysis, and particularly on point. Let's keep in mind that the one of the most powerful weapons that any regime could use is, through the arts. Goebbels used in Nazi Germany used the American movie marketing scheme in order to inundate the German individuals with that propaganda. And Mike, once again, you knock it out the park with respect to how important it is to kill a person, to kill a yeah, groups, cultural being before you can totally eradicate them of humanity. And that's exactly, it's no accident that this clown has assumed the head of the Kennedy Foundation out of no, all of a sudden. These things are, they're not serendipitous. These are intentional. Dr. Christmas, what were your thoughts?
I don't know all of Kendrick's music, but I thoroughly enjoyed the halftime show. It was some parts that I clearly couldn't understand. I could understand a lot of the underlying themes. I love um, Samuel Jackson playing Uncle Sam in that. I think that was right on point. It took me back to Django. when he was in the movie Django, and I was glad to see um, all of those underlining themes and to see how it was having an effect on the young people and how it was making them think about it. The people that really know Kendrick's music, how they were really understanding it, where I was at when we were watching it and getting into the whole movement of it. And like Mike said, I think the icing on the cake was that Trump brought himself to the Super Bowl and then had to sit there and watch all of that. I thought was really great. On top of the Eagles winning, because Trump had affiliated himself somewhat with the Chiefs. I saw so many of Chief people taking pictures with Trump and people from Mahomes' family taking pictures with Trump. So I really thought that was good. What I did not, we still have a lot of work that needs to be done, with the culture and with the rap culture and getting that defined more and focus more on what we need to do to move forward as a community. And I don't like, I know that the song is good and that he won the Grammy, on the diss track, but I don't like us still being in this diss mode is what I'm saying. And because we have to move towards a mode of unity. And at some point, I do want to see Kendrick and Drake come out of this and be united in some way.
Only thing I'll say to that is battle rapping is a part of the culture,
It is.
and so that can't go. So as
It's
long
a
as you
part
ain't
of the culture,
as
but
long
when it
as you ain't
trickles
trying to kill
down to
each
the
other, nope.
when it
As long as,
trickles down to the street, though,
that
it
ain't
takes on
trickling
a
down to
different
the
thing.
street.
It's just not.
Boss.
It's
Nope,
just
nope,
not.
nope,
It's just
nope.
not
Boss.
talking.
These two guys ain't nothing that they doing going to trickle down to the street, because just like the song say, he ain't like us. And so the whole thing is, so yes, we do have to figure out whatever we're gonna figure out. But I mean, Mike Jones, you could speak to this. Like, so we ain't always like jazz.
Right.
So old folks thought jazz was the devil, and
Oh,
so
gospel. Old folks thought gospel was the devil's music because it sounded like blues. So the
yeah,
iteration was spiritual hymns was what was in the black church. And when gospel emerged, the gospel was not embraced uh, in the black church. It became uh, uh, that, but it didn't start that. So I think you got to let the culture evolve where it is. Louis Armstrong comes from a place, and 25 years later, Charlie Parker is changing the whole thing. So you just have to you you have to be somewhat of a libertine about culture. You just have to let it percolate and see how it's going to what it's going to incubate into. The
I agree
one
with that, and I think that's what, and I think the Super Bowl performance is showing where it is evolving to, and I do like that direction it's going in.
But I
But
think the most important thing about that kind of thing is it generates a conversation about it and what it means. So
Mm-hmm.
it's in the reaction to the object or the performance that is really what you're looking at, because basically that's Kendrick Lamar's idea. And once he puts it out there, it speaks for itself. The real question is, as the observer, what do you think? How do you react? And it's your reaction that starts to shape the culture, not literally what he did. The one thing Gerald said, you said, Gerald, about uh, I need for unity. We're never going to have unity. What we need is a consensus, okay? and that means we got a general agreement on some fundamental principles, and we're gonna keep arguing about the tactical execution. But at the strategic level, we kind of all on the same page. I would suggest that at no time in the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement, was there black political unity. Okay, but
There
what there
wasn't
was
even unity in the Panthers.
right. But what you but to have organization and discipline, you need a consensus, and a consensus means that a critical mass of people, however you define a critical mass, have agreed that this is the direction and this is the concept, and uh, and we'll come to a jam session every night and argue about what we go play.
Mm.
But
And
but this is the direction that we go play in.
and,
So,
and to some extent, the battle rap is Socratic, though, Gerald. And I'll give you an example. I think that No Vaseline by Ice Cube, which put the industry on blast in terms of the exploitation that rap groups were receiving from managers. You know, how in the world you gonna be the players, for life crew with this telling you what to do? You got your money in one bank account. How are you that ignorant? What are you talking about? So and I believe that there is post no Vaseline and pre no Vaseline in my opinion. If in fact after no Vaseline, you allowed yourself to sign a 360 deal, you allowed yourself to take a pittance on what you were getting, you allowed yourself to take all the advances and royalties, you are really ignorant beyond measure. And you have absolutely nothing. You should not be in the arts at all because what you're going to leave is a chain of foolishness. And so, I mean, I think that Kendrick is making another moment along those same lines, culturally and artistically, in terms of what he's saying. He was very clear. We're not going to allow white comedians to talk about our sisters. He's been very clear about saying, I won't stretch. Give me a nappy head and stretch marks. These are things that we need to make a hard left turn to. And I'm glad that he's doing that at the time where he's putting value in individuals that need to be reminded of who they are from time to time.
Larry, it's interesting that you use Cube and No Vaseline for that. There's I don't know on whose podcast that he showed up on, but the DOC, who's also a contemporary and of Cube
Dr. Dre, yeah,
and
Dre.
and NWA and um, was writing for he was one of the lyricists for Straight Outta Compton, and then certainly his disc drop within a couple of years of that. But anyway, he's described Kendrick as you know as being in the lineage of Cube,
Mm,
Ice Cube. That Cube was the guy that was kind of bringing more of that social political dynamic into West Coast rap at that time, and then you see Kendrick in that social political space now, and that's kind of how the DOC sees it, and it's kind of interesting given that he's still in that all of this space, all of this comes from kind of the same space musically, and it all comes from kind of Dr. Dre, kind of on the production end of it. And so,
true.
um, it was kind of interesting to hear DOC's take on it. But again, and I think the other thing, well, I know the other thing that we typically don't view this as, and that is rap music as an extension of the Black Arts movement. And so, so we figure that the Black Arts movement runs roughly, 65 to 75. And then we have Cool Herc, you know, being kind of like the epicenter. That's kind of how this thing is kind of played out. We know he wasn't the only person doing whatever, but he kind of has become that person as identified as the genesis for all of this at 73. And so we see, a an emergence of this, which again was really just built around the music of the time. And so he took the music of the time and really just started playing it differently. he
Mhm.
and Grandmaster Flash, right? And so Hurt is kind of credited with the two turntables and this, that, or the other, and blah 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 blah. But it's Flash who really is the person who creates the break beats. But all of this occurs in that period of time. This occurs in that 65 to 75 space. So this too is a part of the Black Arts Movement. And with that in mind, I would venture to guess then, if we go across the various mediums, then maybe we're still in the Black Arts Movement. Maybe the Black Arts Movement isn't 65 to 75. Maybe the Black Arts Movement just is.
I agree with you, Doc. I think the Black Arts Movement is, and it's a continuation, and you do not get to identify or just associate with things that you like. Each generation
Right.
has a period of condemnation on the next generation.
Wait a minute. And
They do,
part,
but I think with the hip hop though, it has been we it's been more violent and we had more losses. I do think that,
So
and
is hip
I
hop
think
more violent than what we call black exploitation?
say that again.
Is it more violent than what we've called black exploitation?
I think so.
well, now,
Based on what? Based
but
on what?
Gerald, look at this. We made a hero out of Superfly, who a drug dealer. Okay.
Right.
Okay, and Curtis Mayfield's a soundtrack for Superfly. Like Freddie did the
I
whole.
think, but the difference though in that time period was that we didn't have all the different mediums to get it across like we do now, and it wasn't being as the children, especially the young children, were not being as involved in it at that time period.
Well,
That is not true
Little young,
either.
and when I'm talking about like, like now we have these little young children. Like if you go out and you work with a lot of young kids, and I'm talking about very young, kindergarten, preschool, all that kind of thing, repeating this but unable, to read or twerking and all of that. That's
yeah,
that's what's
There's
problematic for
this
me because
Gerald,
carnage.
it's
but
leading to
but
them being
Carnage.
incarcerated.
but
The
Gerald,
carnage is the carnage. Then, like this is easy. I can guarantee you the murder rate in St. Louis is worse then than it is now. And your only reference point for what we so the reference point for damning rap music is street violence. Street violence
I'm not
is
damning it just
I'm
all
not
across
saying
the board.
I am not saying I'm saying the reference point for damning rap music. I'm not saying you, I'm saying the reference point for
Hmm. Hmm.
damning rap music is crime statistics. And the crime statistics now are not as bad, not even close to whatever they were in the midst of what we call black exploitation. And so it can't be that
I'm
only
gonna double
this
check that for the
only
next show.
only this check it out. It's easy. This low hanging fruit. I win this battle every time. There's this this there, there's no time. There's no time in the 70s where the murder rate was lower than it is today. And so
Gerald, I mean,
when you look at
Charles.
these things, and just as Mike just referenced, like Superfly, um, uh, uh, you know, any of these movies, Cotton Goes to Harlem. Cotton Goes to Harlem is actually kind of like a comedy.
Right.
And it's terrible. It's in terms of the violence that occurs in that. So the way they treat women in those movies, the language that they use in their movies, and the violence in those movies, and and what gets attached to those soundtracks that then kind of play out, that become, the samples for rap music, all of that stuff represented a time and space. We don't know Bumpy Johnson if 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 not for, that kind of stuff. We thought that kind of stuff was just made up. That kind of stuff was kind of predicated on a Bumpy Johnson. That stuff is kind of predicated on, you know, Iceberg Slim. All these people actually lived and they all did the harm that they did.
The other thing, Gerald, I think we're attacking the wrong problem in the sense that it's really not the art, it's the technology. And we don't have an appreciation for how technology changes culture. Okay. So that the reach is more a function of technology than it is the pervasive the art literally in and of its self. So one of the things that we need to get a handle on, at least conceptually, and I'm not talking about anything other than that, is the profound impact that technology has on how you live your life, how you understand how to live your life, and it literally it's seditious in the way it changes how people interact with each other. So if we had not invented the internet, uh, uh, the cell phone, and all of that kind of stuff, wouldn't no more people know who Ice Cube is than knew who Curtis Mayfield was. Okay, because the technology is what makes them ubiquitous, not literally what they're doing. So I think we have tendency to kill the messenger and not look at the vehicle that brought the message. And sometimes the vehicle or the process is much more the culprit than what the message was. Because if you're 6 or 7 years old, you shouldn't have access to that much stuff. Okay, because that kind of stuff has always existed, but it was, what old folks would tell you, this grown folks business. This ain't for you, and that space between grown folks and children has all but disappeared in our culture today, and that has more to do with technology than it does to do with the content, I think.
And again, the art is the reflection. It's not the other way around. And it's not that the art has created that. The art reflects that. And certainly people are gonna mimic whatever they mimic, but the issue doesn't exist because of the art. The art manifest is a manifestation of what exists. That just kind of is. And so but yeah, that certainly.
It's a manifestation of what exists, but the technology does amplify it, and some of the messages are bad,
But I know all I'm saying is
really bad for us.
they the same messages. So there's
Mm.
nothing different. There's nothing
I don't think they've always been the same messages, though.
they
I guess that's
have.
why.
What is different between Superfly and the Mac versus anything that we see? It's all the same.
It's even when we were watching Superfly and the Mac, you didn't have the type of violence, even though you had guns and shooting in that, they didn't show the blood and the way that they portray it now was not it's so realistic now.
But
It
that's
wasn't even that
technology, Gerald.
realistic
That's
That
my,
back
is
my
then.
point.
that's
You know,
technology.
that's
Maybe that is
technology. That
false.
is technology, but
Watch,
that
watch
technology
Cotton go
being
to Harlem.
amplified is having a much more serious effect on us.
Watch Cotton.
It
That's
is technology, and
that
it's
is what
also
I'm
a
saying.
lack of like you said, Mike, that window in between, parents and children has gotten so small now too. We were shielded from a lot of that stuff. It
Well,
existed, but we were shielded from that growing up.
watch any of those movies. All of those movies are very violent, very misogynistic, as misogynistic, if not worse than anything. Watch Coffee. Coffee
Mm.
blew dude head off with a shotgun. They show that. Watch any of those movies. And so the point is that it always existed. And so we gotta not and so that was kind of part of my issue with the segmentation. We gotta not be vulnerable to so when we take these stances,
But
all that happens,
even
we
if it
end up
always has
vulnerable
uh
to
uh
to the
even if it's
larger system.
always been a part of it, that doesn't mean that we can't still address it or still try to move towards curbing some of that because it's
I'm
problematic.
not I'm not saying we can't address it. I'm saying to
Mm.
say that we need to address it because of rap music is a falsehood because it has always been. So if it always needs to be addressed, then we need to address it in a manner that suggests that it always needed to be addressed. But what typically happens is that we say that we're in this space because of blah 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 blah, when in reality this has been a this has been a common fight in terms of our aesthetic all the way through. That there's been something that has upset the middle class, um, the black middle class's sensibilities, that has allowed the black middle class to get misaligned with the enemy to suppress our cultural strivings. That is, that too is a consistent stream. And this is just the latest piece. When in reality, there's nothing more violent than the stuff that white folks produce. Nothing more misogynistic, nothing more violent. And like, what's more violent than the Marvel series? Ain't nobody saying get rid of that. And so we don't we, we don't want to deal with the implications of our oppression, and that's what black exploitation gave us. That's what rap music gives us. That's what gospel music gave us. That's what rap music gave. That's what jazz gave. That's what blues gave. All those things were the cultural manifestations of second class citizenship, and we don't like what that stuff looks like, and so much so we act like what was happening in the past didn't happen, and somehow or another we're going the other way. We're not going the other way. It was drug dealers and pimps and hoes then. There's drug dealers and pimps and hoes now.
It's
It
a
looks
whole lot
different.
more. It's a whole lot more now.
That is not true. And so
I,
it can't be
I
true.
see it on a
And
daily basis, though. I see
no,
on a daily basis what it's doing. I
you
see it on a
see
regular basis.
you see who gets caught on a daily basis. But when you look at the numbers will tell you that violent crime and crime overall is on a downward slope. That's just the truth. That ain't my truth. Those that's the numbers.
Yeah, but
It's
I see what Gerald is essentially saying is that this is a soundtrack to these crimes, and
always been that.
yeah, and I know, but the metaphysic aspect of the musicology aspect of this is music is spiritual, and it is an entire cultural that overtakes these individuals. This is the constant consumption, and very few things are rational to them anymore. outside of this perceived culture. I mean, they changed everything about themselves.
And
So yes,
again, that
please. So
to
I,
Mike
so yeah,
Jones's point,
yeah.
that is a function of technology.
There is
And
no question about that.
yeah,
Please.
Technology allows it to be more expansive, but we still have to look at the subject matter.
and I'm not I'm not arguing
But
I
it.
know that.
I'm,
I
I'm
understand
arguing
the
arguing
technology of it.
I am
I'm not
arguing
a subject
with
matter expert
uh,
in any
what
of the things
numbers say.
y'all are discussing. Not even close to it. But the reason I'm focused on the technology is because I think Charles has a point on the metaphysics of it, as Larry raised it, and that is you've always had these countercultural currents, let's call them that, as a product of any level of art. So, and then you got art exists on two levels. There's high art, which is what we saw Sunday in Kendrick Lamar, and then there's pop bullshit that we see every day, and that's what used to come on the radio. Okay, so but the technology is what allows that to be so pervasive, and the forces that intervene to mitigate some of the messages, Gerald, that you're talking about don't function as well as they did at some point historically because of the technology, and that's so. I would rephrase the question and not worry so much about uh, the content or censoring the art when the real perverse uh, perverse thing is the pervasiveness of technology in our lives. There is no longer a space that's private. Okay, technology has consumed literally everything, and capitalism has commodified literally every relationship, every concept, everything that you do. So, uh, what somebody said about the internet is when you can't figure out what the product is, you're the product. So, what we have become as a population in the 21st century in the advanced or more industrialized world is we have become the commodity that's getting traded. So I think uh, therein is the problem because the high art that has some aesthetic value has some philosophical foundation or basis. It's about something more than just the immediate visual effect. I think that will prevail. I mean, if you take hip hop again, that I'm not uh, familiar with or expert on, but there are artists or art in that genre that has emerged as uh, standard setters. Okay, that this is what this is really about, and then there's all the stuff that gets produced that falls short of the mark. And the difference is that with technology, we now have a garbage that's not worth too much gets the same kind of play as uh, the equivalent of Picasso or Duke Ellington. And I'll take level set of what we do. I think what we do has some value. There are a few other people that think what we do has some value. But if we was four batshit crazy brothers talking bullshit every week, we'd be just as much on the internet as we are now. So uh, uh, there's no screen or ability to sort out what needs to move downstream versus what ought to be just shipping off. And you didn't you didn't hear that. And let's think about when the only way you could hear a new song was on the radio. Well, at some point, the song either had to be good enough or you had to pay the disc jockey because that's how you got your stuff heard on the
Payo,
radio, huh? Yeah.
payo.
So the reality is bad stuff was too hard to get played, so you didn't hear it. But now you can stream damn near anything. So the worst artists in the world still have the ability to have access to the same audience as as people who are masters of their craft, and that's why I focus on the technology because if you do something better with the technology, there's a level of self editing that happens that you say, well, you will never hear that because that really is not that good, independent of the message. I'm from the era of the last poets, okay, and you wouldn't play the last poets for your mother, but every trio of brothers who was cursing and making poetry didn't get an album though, okay. But the last poets 50 years later is still considered a masterpiece and probably a foundational concept for what became rap. Uh, and But I'm sure they wasn't the only one. But you had to be real good when the technology was limited or the venues or vehicles were limited. The more democratic uh, the process is, the more bullshit gets the opportunity to play. So, I mean, one of the things that we don't do is we don't make judgments anymore about who ought to be in the space and who shouldn't be in the space. And we're reluctant to say, you shouldn't be here because you ain't good enough to be here. Or we don't think you're good enough to be here. So I think you guys are having a discussion, a distinction without a real difference. I mean, you're making different points, uh, but they're fundamentally coming from the same place. The way I'm listening to you, and both of you all know what you're talking about from a content standpoint, and I don't because I'm too old.
But even but again, so you referenced the last poets. If not for Biggie, there's X number of people, not black people, people. There's X number of black people who are not introduced to when the revolution comes because Biggie sampled party and bullshit. So because he sampled that, people get into the music and then they go back and then they find out that he's sampled the last poets and now the last poets is in their consciousness. Now, what else you got to ferret through before you even get to that? Some very, very raunchy music and lyrics before you even get to that gem. And so that's the piece. That's how this works.
That's the price of art.
That's the price. And so that's what it looks like. And it's up to people. It's up to people in their households because again, so what's worse, screen time or rap music? I don't know. And so all of this stuff, all of this technology has whatever its cost is. But again, it's that same technology that allows us to film, record, send to the West Coast, edit it. produced. We is all we decided is that this is going to be our content, and our content is about that. We level set. We take all of the information and we lay out all of the facts. That's what we do with our access to this medium. Somebody likes it.
And we just have to raise our consciousness. I just think we just have to raise our consciousness and deal with the whole technology issue also. And I think we are looking
So,
at this whole
but
technology issues too, because when you look at the schools now, many of the schools are moving to this whole idea of not being able to bring their cell phones and things of that nature into the school during the school day. So I think there is an awakening that is coming on that level. And I think that his performance at the Super Bowl, going back to Kendrick Lamar, was a raising of that consciousness. And that was one of the things that I like best about it.
Right.
Mhm.
So that's so to go back to that. That's exactly what that is. So then there is a level
Because
of
we have had an era, of more conscious rap than what we have now.
I don't know, because again, we get swayed by, so like we can't have it both ways. That ain't never been a time since this thing has been marketed. There have always been conscious rappers. Period. Ain't never been a time when they ain't existed. The issue is, who does the industry tout? So
What do they promote? Yeah.
another fake battle, KRS versus your homeboy. What's Nelly? Ain't no way you compare the two of those guys in terms of lyrics, in terms of content, in terms of wordplay, in terms there's nothing, there's nothing, there's no place in terms of the art where Nelly compares to KRS. But it becomes a battle because the industry was marketing him being Nelly, not Chris. And so if people chose Nelly, people chose Nelly. It was in part kind of manipulated, but that's what they chose. But there was always a choice for Chris. And so there are choices now. One of those choices that stands and continues to stand is Chris. And so there's always conscious rap. You got to decide
And there's always that manipulation going on too.
you got to decide what you got to decide what you want as a
Right,
consumer.
Joe.
And so, but the manipulation is the problem. It ain't, and so, but that is a part of the war. So we got to see.
Right.
So that's the thing, is that the war exists on every front. It's a war. And so we got to quit playing. The war exists on every front. And so if we see that there's pressure, because like so the contract is up, I think next year will be 5 years for the Rock Nation and the NFL contract. So I think it's up next year. So we'll see if the powers that how what the powers
They gonna get fired.
what
They gonna get. I can tell you that.
right. So we'll see.
Right.
And so
Nah, they getting fired. Okay, don't make
so-
no difference how good it was, how popular it was. The NFL ain't gonna take on
okay.
the
And so
orange
we
fly.
will see.
Okay,
And so then
'cause
the issue
they
becomes
about short term.
okay. And so then the issue becomes, how do we respond? Because
Oh,
for
you know how
us,
you
it's
could.
just
You know how
You think they're gonna get? What do you think, Mike? You think they're gonna get fired early? You think it's gonna be the end of it
it's
now
just a
they
after
won't
one.
Kendrick
The
Lamar,
contract is up.
they
or
And
they'll
won't
be in
renew.
one more year?
They won't renew the contract.
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
So the
okay,
contract is
Okay.
just up. And so
right.
the
Now,
point is,
but
how
here's the
do
point.
we respond?
But you know how we could respond the same way we could have responded to Colin Kaepernick, and that is if them brothers, particularly the stars, say, well, if they ain't doing the halftime show, I ain't doing the Super Bowl.
Well, but we know that ain't gonna happen, which is how
Yeah.
we got. That's kind of how
Ain't
we
no
got to the
see
point.
that's the power. That's the power of your agency. Let,
Yeah, that's the power of your
let me tell
agency. You
you how they
absolutely right. That would change everything.
But
wait,
that had always
wait a
been.
minute. Let me tell you
That's always been the
this
issue.
this Sunday. Wait, a minute, wait. This is Sunday, and
Mm-hmm.
we're going to see this garbage. That's the NBA All Star game today. Let
Mm-hmm.
me tell you how the Players Association, and they had a breakthrough, and I forgot what the issue was, but Oscar Robertson is the president of the NBA Players Association, and the NBA All Star game is going to be televised live in an hour and a half. And Oscar said, "Let's not play." Oh, I know what it was. It was the owners wouldn't let the players have a lawyer or agent at the contract negotiation. Okay, couldn't do it. This is the 1960s. Okay, uh, 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 they were defenseless in the negotiation, so they wanted to be represented in have their representative representing them in these business discussions. And the owner said no. So they waited until the All Star game. And they got the 24 to say, I ain't going to play and we shouldn't play. Half of the folks say, yeah, I'm down with that. And then I want to say it was Wilt and maybe somebody else, because Wilt didn't care about how much money he made playing basketball, because he made a lot of money doing other things. And he said, "Oh man, y'all really want to do that, lot?" But here's what happened: they in the locker room, and Russ was with it, Oscar was with it. Oscar was leading it. I don't know, I forget where Baylor was, but I knew Chamberlain. They say he was an outlier. He wasn't opposed. He just, it wasn't his particular cup of tea. And but he said, "All right." So Oscar Robertson call the commissioner and say, "Ain't gonna be no All Star game on TV because we ain't playing unless y'all you get the owners to change the rules about contract negotiations." And they said, "You can't do that." He said, "You can't make us play. And you the one got television program in an hour, not us." Okay. And the owners buckled.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's just like Oscar Robertson. The way you got free agency was Oscar Robertson did what Kurt Flood did. He said, "I ain't going to Baltimore." Okay. And he ended up with Milwaukee with your boy. He said, "Because my contract said you can't trade me."
So
So what I'm
isn't
saying
that
is,
black culture too?
standing on business works every time.
And so we
Mm-hmm.
hope that we see that. And so, but even if we don't, so even if they decide that they're gonna play, we got to do something different if we think that that's what it merits, right?
Right.
And so, the thing becomes we make our decision kind of based on the masses' decision kind of gets skewed in this whole thing, and we've seen this we've seen this before, and again we saw it in the midst of that because the players they didn't they didn't en masse move in a direction that suggested that they had Colin Kaepernick's back.
Right.
And so,
And here's what I'm going to suggest. This is never the progress has never been a function of mass movement. It's been a function of a critical mass of people at a juncture where they got leverage and they act. So the reality is that worked because Oscar Robinson didn't try to get everybody in the NBA to do it. He got the 24 best players in the association to agree to do
and,
it. And so let's just say that all the marginal role players on NFL teams the stars say y'all don't have to be because y'all they can fire y'all, but they can't fire me. Okay, if you these elite marquee players, they run the league. That's the NBA now. Okay, so the point is if all the superstars had said, no, you can't do that to Colin, because if you do it to him, you'll do it to us about something else. So they should just have been gangster about it. Matter of fact, I ain't even into Black Lives Matter, but I'm not gonna go let y'all do that to him because it damages the power equilibrium between us. So now it ain't even about the issue no more. It'd be about the issue for the public, but it ain't about the issue for me. It's about my business and my relationship with you. And I don't want that tilted. Okay? And tell Trump to bring his fat old ass out here to play football then, if he got something to say about it. If you think you can sell the tickets with him on the field, then listen to him. And that's but you can't be an entrepreneur. You know what? You can even be an entrepreneur and just thinking about yourself if you can be forward thinking enough. And the old adage is true. If you take care of the game will take care of you. But our problem is all of too many of us play the short game and don't play the long game. And that's why we always end up in the worst place. Because we just playing the hand right in front of you. And the poker game lasts all night, man. We're gonna be here gambling all night. This one hand,
Well,
this one hand is just one hand.
my my concern is that we haven't seen these guys across sports strike for
Oh, they ain't built like that.
anything
Right.
other than their own financial interests.
Their own interests. We have
And
not
so,
seen that. We haven't seen people built. We haven't seen athletes built like that in a decade.
and so
Decades.
hopefully, we are at a turning point at this very moment. I am other than
I doubt that. You know
yeah,
what?
yeah,
I doubt that.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't see that.
I
But
put it like this.
but
Uh,
what I
uh,
do think is important about it, and then I think, and what I also think is important about uh, what you just laid out, Mike, is that it where we one of the places that we continue to get stuck is that we think everybody got to come, and
right.
everybody ain't got to come. We got to have a critical mass. I'm I'm just I'm just doubting that mass exists within this, within this, this grouping of athletes. But we'll see. But regardless of what they do, the people have choices. And so if the people say that, this is you know,
Well,
this is
well,
disrespectful to our
well.
culture, then
Part.
we need then whoever believes that needs to tune out, regardless of whatever other people are doing. And
I,
so,
I, 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 I was going to agree with you on that, Charles. That we can't care more. We can't care more about professional athletes than professional athletes care about us.
correct.
So, you know, the one part of this that we need to understand. There's something that I say to the folks who kind of starting out doing what I've done, and they get themselves elected or they get in the game in some way. And I said there's three things that you need to remember. You'll always have enemies. Your enemies are always dangerous and they're always relentless. So remember what the referee tells the fighter. Last thing the referee tells the fighters in center ring: protect yourself at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you need to operate. I got enemies. My enemies are dangerous and they're relentless. They're here every day.
They enemies.
They're enemies. But
That's it. And that's what
but
we got to understand.
and that's what we got to understand. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what we not understanding. That's really what we are not understanding, and that's
No,
right on point.
I'm gonna go to Charles thing. Uh, uh, literally take care of it. You go get, and your ass will get introduced to him when you turn everything over to him too.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
Now I said the mistake that we make is, given that scenario that I laid out,
Mm.
too many of us think that God will take care of them and protect them. And I say, when you operate with that premise, your ass will be meeting God fairly quicker than you necessarily was planning on it.
All right, right.
Yeah, you broke. It was choppy the first time you said it, so I was
Okay.
listening.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So,
Exactly.
so Mike, we've extended your hard stop. So,
Yeah, well,
I gotta go too. I gotta get ready for
so,
service.
and I imagine that that Attorney Fields
well,
is
yeah, but I got pay him, so okay.
and so
That last statement was profound.
absolutely. And so we
No,
thank
no, no.
every.
I was able to just listen in, man. You gonna take us out, Doc? Yeah,
Yeah.
So
because I,
we,
yeah,
we
I became an audience member.
awesome, awesome. And
Yeah.
so again, you have an opportunity. Find us, find a level set on YouTube and like us and do what we try to do. We try to take the issues and we explore the
Hey,
issue and we have we bring them here and we discuss them and we try to discuss them from every angle or as many
oh,
angles as we can in our effort to level set. And so until we see you next week, we hope that you do the same. And so on behalf of myself, Attorney Larry Fields, Attorney Gerald Christmas, and D. Mike Jones, we say have a great week and a wonderful rest of the day.
Yes, sir.
indeed.